Hey everyone, Aaron, thank you so much for listening, liking, and sharing the Mark Price for 3 podcast. We appreciate so much the feedback that we receive, and please continue to do that. It's obviously the holidays. Mark and I are taking one more week off, and we'll be back next week with a new episode. But today I wanted to look back at 2024 and some of the amazing guests that we've had. His brother Brent, Brad Daugherty, Jonathan Isaac, Dave Holmes from right here in Columbus, Ohio, and the time we did our very first in-person episode at Grace Church. So we hope you enjoyed today. Today is a look back at 2024, and we will see you next week with a brand new episode because the Cavs are killing it right now.
Hello, everybody. This is Josh Price, and you are listening to the Mark Price for 3 podcast. Each episode, my dad will be talking NBA basketball, sharing some coaching and instruction, and of course, talking about his faith. Without further delay, here's my dad, Mark Price.
My life's been waiting on me.
Welcome back to the Mark Price for 3 podcast, episode 83 today. We've got a special guest. It was a big weekend in the Price family. Mark, how are you?
I'm doing great, Aaron. We're over the hump. Hey, the last few weeks have been a grind, getting ready for Josh's wedding, but everything went great. Couldn't have been happier with how it all turned out. It was a beautiful wedding. God was honored and glorified through the whole process. And obviously having family and friends here always makes it even better. So, I thought I'd take advantage today while my brother Brent's back in town. He came in for the wedding and thought I'd have him join us again on the podcast. It's been a while. We did our podcast with him, probably over about a year ago. And so, I think there's some corrections he would like to make, some accusations maybe that we've lobbed, since then. But welcome, man. We're glad to have you back.
It's good to be back, Aaron. It's good to see you. Last time we couldn't get the Zoom to work, so I finally get to put a face to the voice. So it's nice to actually get to meet you this way.
Absolutely. Well, sorry. I could turn the camera off if you really want to. No, it's good to have you back. Like we said, our audio is a little better. Mark's got a microphone now and everything. So he's officially a podcaster. We've come a long way since probably the last time we did an interview. But all right, let's get it out of the way right away because it was mentioned before we recorded something about a 3-point line. Do we need to clarify because there was a little discussion about high school records and things like that, or state of Oklahoma records.
I just want to make one clarification because the last time I was on, there was a little bit of debate on who owns the Enid High School, a single game scoring record. Mark scored 50 points in a single game. I scored 54. And there was he had a couple of arguments. One was that he didn't have the 3-point line and I did. And I want to make that correction. I did not have the 3-point line either. So his other argument is I scored 6 points in overtime. So I don't know about that one, but I definitely wanted to correct the 3-point line discrepancy there. So,
well, the way I look at it, and I've kind of thought this through a little bit more, is I think, the 2 Price brothers, one has the regular season scoring record and one has the all-time scoring record. So we got them both covered.
That's right.
We'll have that debate till probably they put us in the grave, but that's just the way it goes in the Price family.
Do it, but congratulations again to Josh.
Yeah, he's just to see how, happy he was. And it was just, as a dad, that's all you want. You want somebody, first of all, loves the Lord, that they find that right person that God has for them. And so we're pleased. We're happy. We know Josh is happy. So it was all good.
Yeah. Did you cut a rug?
You know what? The dance floor was a little bit too tight for mom and dad to get out there. But didn't do a lot of dancing on this one. But Laura got to do the mother-son dance. And so
nice.
She got to dance with Josh. And so that was nice. And so, but I didn't, my dogs were kind of hurting me a little bit from everything else. So
he didn't have enough room to break out the lawnmower move and the hedge
sprinkler.
So a little tight out there.
Yeah, spacing wasn't good. Spacing was not good.
We'll go with that.
I was driving by the Washington Bullets, which was the bottom of the NBA barrel think we won 22 games my first year, and we had a whopping improvement and won 24 my second. So we had a 2-game improvement. It's tough, when you're going through there's no question. My going into my 4th year, actually the year that Mark got there, but he ended up being injured and not playing. We went on a run, almost made the 8th playoff spot, and still only won, I think, about 35 games. But it was an amazing run with that group of guys, and the excitement in the city began to build. It's such a mental battle when you are losing night in and night out, and you can't lose perspective of who you are as a player, what you want to accomplish, both individually, that should hopefully, translate into team success, because losing is contagious and it can create a toxic atmosphere if you let it. I think that's one thing they'll have to fight, finger pointing and what's going on in the locker room, and, what kind of attitudes people are showing up to work. That's what you got to fight. And as an individual, Caitlin Clark, she's got to continue to, keep herself mentally sharp, and dare I say spiritually grounded, to go in every day and go, I'm going to put in the work, and I'm going to be a factor that's going to help turn this thing around in terms of not just my play, but my attitude, my encouragement of everybody else, those type of things. And if you can begin to change that culture, change that environment, then good things, and you get the right pieces and the right people in place, then good things start to happen.
Let me ask you both this as dads. If you're Caitlin Clark's dad, Brent, I'll start with you. What do you tell her right now, especially having played in the league? What would you say to her?
Well, I kind of think back, what would my dad say to us?
Yeah.
He was so influential, and I mean, he would basically, he would say, sorry for yourself, number one. I mean, that was his thing. Is anytime we would come and, be complaining, he would turn it back to us, I mean, this is a gut check, you're going to have to hold your head up high. You're going to have to get out there. You're going to put in the work, and you're going to have to go take the challenge. Mm-hmm. And the best way to quiet the critics is to go out there and do the job. Mm-hmm. And I would say one thing, going just back to our last question, is whether it's fair or unfair, it's a lot to put on a rookie. Mm-hmm. And Mark and I were talking over his traditional Chick-fil-A breakfast this morning over a chicken biscuit. We were talking about how in our careers we had to learn. I mean, we're 6-foot kids from Enid, Oklahoma. We were able to adjust to each new level and new challenge, but it takes a little bit of time. We had to find new ways to get our shot off, new ways to create space. Right. From high school. I mean, if you look at me shooting in high school, I told him I'd watched no film. I was bad. I wasn't a very good shooter, but I was still scoring.
Yeah.
To what I became in college, to what I became throughout my NBA career. Great players continue to find ways to improve, to adjust, to mature. And she's going to do that. She's going to get better and better and better. She right now, she's just stepped into the next level. Mm-hmm. And people are expecting, it took a few years for Michael Jordan to start winning the championships,
Right.
So it's a little bit unfair. They're expecting her to step right in and to be the savior of the league, but that's what position she's been put in. So if I was her father, I would just continue to say, number one, you've been given this gifts, you've been given this opportunity, but it's back on you. You gotta come in every day. You gotta put in the work. You gotta keep working, improving, going out and showing it, competing. And you got to rise above it. You got to rise above that stuff. And that's hard to do. That's where a spiritual foundation comes into huge play. If you have a relationship with God, and you know that he's going to give you the strength and the foundation and the confidence to go out and do what he's called you to do. I don't know where Caitlin Clark is in that, but in terms of introspectively, challenging yourself every day and taking that challenge, not shying away from it, but maybe using it. I would say a guy like Mark Price or Michael Jordan, I mean, they're going to take that challenge. Yeah, all right. Game on. you guys you want to come at me? I'm coming at you, and it's that kind of mentality, that kind of attitude that stars, I think, come from.
I think back to those years, when the Pistons were winning championships and Jordan was trying to break through in the Bulls and the Pistons. I mean, talk about beat somebody up.
Big time.
I mean, we know those Pistons teams, they were very physical. They were dirty in a lot of ways, trying to hurt people. And I just remember, knocking Jordan down and putting 2 or 3 guys and him hitting and not saying a word, getting back up, playing through it, never really saying anything ugly toward the Pistons organization or players personally. And then he finally beat them, and they ended up being kind of ugly about the way they lost. And it kind of separated him because he was able to do it, take the high road, so to speak.
Yep.
And listen, I'm not saying that's easy to do by any means, but the more that you can take that high road, I mean, people are going to love you even more for it. And the other people are going to start embarrassing themselves, which in my mind, they already are.
I know the Price boys are pretty competitive. So who's the better driver?
A better driver?
Yeah, between the two of you.
Oh,
well, I think we were actually talking about this earlier. For our size and things, we were both pretty good finishers around the rim. Brent was probably because I was a little bit better shooter early on in my career than Brent. Brent initially was probably more of a looking to drive a lot more than I did. I'd probably give Brent maybe the edge on, driving to the basket. Brent was probably also maybe just a little bit more athletic than me up around the rim, a little bit bigger than I was. And so I was always very comfortable, when I did drive and was able to finish. But it was probably a little bit more of a primary feature of Brent's game early on than mine.
Yeah, I was probably a little bigger and stronger than Mark. And I actually looked for the contact a little bit more. I think trying to, throw my body into people and that kind of thing, which may be why I was injured a little more over my career now looking back. But where Mark had an edge on me is finishing. He was both hands. He a much better left hand. He had some weapons there that I didn't have. I mean, I would use it if I had to, if I absolutely had to. I was right hand dominant, pretty good rip finishing around the rim with my right. Mark had a lot of junk of where he could, he had a lot of ways to figure out how to put the ball in the basket. Crafty. I would say crafty is the word that comes to mind. And he had a lot more use of his left hand finishing, which was an asset when he would get in the lane, but he would try to avoid the contact. Which is smart. I mean, especially when you're playing 82 games a year. I wasn't very smart in that regard. I like to throw myself into people, hoping I'd get a call, but didn't realize I wouldn't. Didn't realize I wasn't the guy in the league that was going to get the calls. So anyway.
Well, I do remember the last time we had an interview, you mentioned a pretty good story about somebody calling home, saying he's trying to get beat up. So
that's right.
Got another story for us today that you could throw out there?
I'm sure there's many if we could recall them. It's harder to recall them.
All right, who's got the better golf game?
No, that's easy. I don't play. So
Mark, there you go.
Mark, although I want to say this, speaking of stories, for Josh's rehearsal dinner, they had it out there, their river club out here where Mark lives, and he wanted to do a little golf challenge after the dinner. So they had a par 3 and there was several guys that signed up, and you had to hit over water onto the green. And, obviously it was a challenge. So you only get one shot at it. If you don't get it over the water, you're out, Mark didn't even get it to the water. So that was Mark's shot at his son's wedding. He choked. I'm pretty sure now I might have thrown my hat in the ring if I'd have known that was going to be the competition. So it was pretty bad. I don't know if anyone got it on film, but you might need to find that footage.
Yeah, and it was funny because it was embarrassing for sure. Here I am, dad, and I'm I'm out on the first swing, and everybody. We were down the way it's set up. We were down hitting and up on the hill was the rest of the rehearsal dinner party, and there was somebody up there heckling me. I just can't figure out who that was. It was up there heckling me. Doing that allowed us, as 6-footers to make it all the way to the NBA. So it works. We know these things work. Now you gotta spend the time and put the effort in, but we'll at least give you the tools to be able to go and become a better basketball player. And that's the exciting part about it.
I think I just heard Mark say, if you come to his camp, you're going to make it to the NBA.
That's what I heard.
That's what he said?
That's what I heard.
I said I'll give you the tools.
Oh, okay.
I'll give you the tools. Now what you do with those tools, I can't control that part of it. I'm an NBA guy or one of these days.
Hey, you never know. I was actually thinking that's probably why I didn't make it to the league. I just became an intramural champion because I never attended a Price basketball club.
That's right.
I mean, that's it. I got the most out of. I didn't have the tools in my toolbox.
Yeah, you couldn't shoot.
I still can't shoot. Well, guys, this has been a lot of fun. I know you probably got some fun plans today and just being together and being brothers and being family. And that's awesome. So I hope you all have a wonderful day today. Dave began his broadcasting career in the most unconventional way, beating out more than 40,000 people to win a reality show on ESPN called Dream Job. He earned a 1-year contract as an anchor at ESPN, and he became the youngest anchor in the history of national television while still a college student at Kent State University. After spending 1 year with ESPN, Dave moved back to Ohio, where he has remained ever since. He spent 9 seasons as the host of Game Time with Ryan Day before joining ABC6 in May of 2024. He is a 26-time Emmy Award winner, born and raised in Ohio, with no intention of ever leaving to go anywhere else. And Dave took over today. He got a chance to interview one of his childhood idols, and that's, of course, Mark Price.
Yeah, this is a dream of mine. 11-year-old Dave would be freaking out right now if he knew he was going to get to host a Mark Price podcast. So I'm curious, Mark, now you're of the age. I was out at your basketball camp last week at Hilliard. At this point, who are the people who are coming up to you? Who are the people like me who are freaking out that they get to meet Mark Price?
Well, it's mostly the parents. I will say that. One of my first questions at camp every week that I start one is there anybody here that has no idea who I am? And there's usually a couple kids there, but I give the parents the kudos. The parents obviously were, kids when I was playing and followed me. And so they've versed their kids very well and schooled them and shown them plenty of highlight tapes and YouTubes and all that stuff. So the kids are like, "Man, you were pretty good, man. You were pretty good." My parents showed me the highlights. So yeah, that's kind of the starting point at these camps. But I look at it; it's been really cool. Aaron and I talk about it a lot. But it's like I'm getting to kind of recreate a new fan base.
Mm-hmm.
Of kids. Even though I don't play anymore.
Yeah.
But through the camps, they get kind of familiarized with what I did, what I accomplished. And there's more kids out there now in the Ohio area that know about Mark Price than they did before I had the camp. So it's a cool thing overall.
Well, Aaron's not here. He gave me the opportunity to do this week. He's basically giving me my dream here to get the host of Mark Price show. So we're just going to pick your brain on 90s Cavs because I'm a 90s Cavs nerd. So my first question, I have this theory in sports that some people are just born at the wrong time. And I'm looking at Phil Mickelson for being born in the era of Tiger Woods.
Right.
Do you ever look at these 90s Cavs teams and think if we were born 5 years earlier or 5 years later and we didn't have to run into 23 in a red jersey, would things have been differently?
Well, of course they would. Of course they would. But, even more than that, and, I don't want to delve into it deeply because I think everybody realizes that the day we traded Ron Harper in the Jordan era, our chances of winning a championship kind of diminished a lot.
Yeah.
I really felt like even though that 1 year Jordan hit the shot, a lot of people don't realize that we had beaten the Bulls 6 times that year in the regular season. We were a much better team than the Chicago Bulls.
Mm-hmm.
Now, they had the best player.
Yeah, which in basketball often is what it takes.
It does. And the the first round series was a 5-game series back then. Yeah. So it was much easier to steal a series than it is now when you have to win 7 games, because 9 times out of 10, the better team is going to win a 7-game series.
Yeah, people forget when you traded Ron Harper, he was a 22-7-7 guy. I mean, he was a legitimate all-star caliber player. And when we talk about Jordan, I'm not going to get into the LeBron debate because that's the ultimate low-hanging fruit. We're not going to do that. We're sick of that debate. But let me ask you this. As someone who saw Jordan up close, not the debate with Jordan and LeBron, but as someone who just saw Michael up close, why was he so much head and shoulders better than everyone? Was it skill? Was it determination? Was it work ethic? What did you see in him that made him so good?
I think his will to win and being able to rise to whatever level the game took it was unique.
Yeah. When I look at the Cavs, I'm one of the only people on earth who preferred the Richfield Coliseum. And the only reason is because I grew up in Stark County, so it was a short drive. So when the family wanted to go to a Cavs game, it was only about 40 minutes and not an hour. So am I crazy for being a Richfield Coliseum truther? Or what did you think when you guys made the move from there to the Gund Arena?
Well, I only played in the Gun full time, one season,
1 year,
my last year with the Cavs. So Richfield was my place as well. There was something about the atmosphere at Richfield Coliseum. It's hard to explain to people that never went to a game there. They had the $9 nosebleed seats at the top. The guys, could get off work and go down and catch the game, especially, when we had things rolling there and had our really good teams. That it was a home court advantage. I really felt like one of the strongest ones in the league. One, it was loud, had a raucous crowd there, but also it was out in the middle of nowhere. So the other opposing teams did not want to stay at the Holiday Inn in Richfield, for one. So if they did stay downtown or a nicer hotel, they had to drive 40 minutes to get to the game. So they did not want to be in Cleveland or have to come play in the Coliseum in Richfield, particularly when we had really developed our team and we were one of the best teams in the East. It was a surefire chance, so we had a good chance of winning that night.
I remember when you guys made the move to Gund Arena, they also changed the uniforms. And it's funny because kids now think anything retro is cool.
Right.
So they're trying. I have Cavs fans now trying to convince me that those hideous jerseys they had you wear in 90, was it 94 when you make the move or whatever?
94.
They try to convince me now that those are actually good jerseys. I always assumed you left the Cavs because they made you wear those jerseys. Is there any correlation there between you look at that jersey and said, you know what, I can't do this anymore?
Yeah, they were pretty bad. The jerseys were pretty bad. The home ones were bad. The black ones, they were even worse. I even had to wear black shoes or something like that. There was some kind of where you had to, for a while there, you had to wear white tennis shoes at home and dark colored tennis shoes on the road. But yeah, those, in a way they're kind of cool retro now, but at the time when they unveiled that, I looked at them and think, oh my, they finally found something worse than the pumpkin orange uniforms that we wore my rookie year.
So for those of you who are just joining us and wondering why Aaron Conrad's voice is not on this, my name is Dave Holmes. I'm a sports anchor at ABC6 in Columbus. I'm filling in this week, getting to interview my childhood idol, Mark Price. So I did a story on you for our Columbus TV station last week, and I found some clips of you in the three-point shootout. And I remember when I was 11 and 12 years old, 93, 94, watching those and just praying that you're going to win this thing. And I went back and watched it, and I wondered, do you have any recollection of what you were feeling that night? And did you know this, as I went back and watched them again, you could have set the record and you missed the last three in the corner rack. Does that ever haunt you to this day, knowing you had Craig Hodges beat for that all-time record?
Yeah, it does. Whenever I see that, I'm like, that's just, why couldn't I have just hit one more shot? But it actually goes back because in 93, I'd won it the year before. It was the first time I won it. Yeah. And a lot of people don't realize I had been in it twice before that and now didn't get out of the first round.
Yeah.
And I kept telling people, maybe it was just a way of kind of offsetting why I didn't get past the first round. But I said, if I ever get past the first round, I'm going to win the whole thing. Because I really do believe the first round's the hardest because, you're not really warmed up.
Yeah, you're tense.
You come out there, it's kind of the first, and you get through that, and then it's like, okay, now let's have some fun. Yeah. And that's what happened. And I'll never forget, it was in Salt Lake City in 93. And, you're always looking for just whatever. And I just remember kind of casually I was walking, and my wife, as I was walking out the door of the hotel room, heading over to the arena, she goes, I'm feeling really good, man. You're going to win this one tonight. And so I give credit to my wife. She gave me the confidence to get through that first round. But then it was, I had I didn't do as what finish. And Terry Porter was who I played with.
Former Blazer.
Yeah. Right. And all he had to do, I was up, I think maybe one point. He had 5 balls on the last rack, and he missed every single one of them. And that's kind of how I won that one. And so I was just like, well, that's bad on him, but good for me.
It's so funny. So I watched this back, and they had Charles Barkley on TNT that night. Barkley at this point still an active player, right. But you could see the seeds being sowed of Barkley on TV, and he was hilarious because I just went back and watched it. And they said, Charles, what do you think about Mark Price? He said, man, they had Mark Price on the ground and they didn't kick him. And he said they had him on the ground and they didn't kick him, and now they blew it and they lost their chance. I could be mistaken on this, but I feel like Salt Lake City, did you go out the next night and make 5 or 6 threes in the All-Star game?
I made 6 threes that weekend, and that was probably my best. I talked to you earlier about efficiency. I was always felt like I was a very efficient shooter, but I think from the 3-point line, from the 3-point contest to the game, the All-Star game, I think I shot like 75% from the 3-point line that weekend. It's just like the basket seemed like it was just, an ocean that I could throw it in. But that was so fun. That was back when the All-Star games were fun too. Yeah. I mean, that game went down to the end.
Yes.
I mean, they were running plays. Pat Riley's running a play for me to have Jordan pass the ball to me for a 3 to like tie the game. And we ran it perfectly and we scored. That was like so much fun.
I do want to ask you about this before we go. I mean, I actually met you. It was in '93. I'm an 11-year-old player, basketball player. I attended the chapel in Akron my whole life. You also went to the chapel in Akron. And back then, for those of you who are in Stark and Summit County, you might remember Newt Larson was the pastor, and he would do these commercials to just advertise the chapel, and it'd be a 60-second devotional. They're really great spots. My dad was on the video committee, and every now and then I'd go along because I had an interest in broadcasting. I thought at age 11, I might get into this. And the one time he says, hey, do you want to come to the shoot next week? Mark Price is going to be there. And I said, you've got to be kidding me. So I go to the commercial, and the one spot is you're playing one-on-one with Newt, and you're shooting. I got to be the rebounder. So I have video of you on a VHS tape in my basement of 11-year-old me rebounding for you. But I wanted to ask you about faith in the NBA. Sometimes I've been in enough locker rooms to know that it's not always the godliest atmosphere in an NBA locker room. So how did you navigate being true to yourself while being in an environment that often begs you to be anything but yourself?
Well, I think, I just tried to use the example of Christ, right, in the scriptures that you read. I mean, Jesus hung out among the sinners a lot of times. I'm sure there was foul language and things like that around him at times in his life, in his ministry as he walked, and yet he was among them, and yet he influenced them and didn't allow them to influence him. And I think there's a difference in, I probably heard a lot of things that I wouldn't pass on that your teammates might have said or heard in the locker room, but yet I didn't participate in that. And I think in a way without even, and I verbally got to share my faith with my teammates, when opportunities presented itself, but it wasn't like I was in there preach, but just by not participating, in a lot of times that's about the biggest statement you can make almost, or just, guys, I'm going to, just kind of quietly walk out of the room, or, go out on the court early and just, you can't always control what's going on around you, but you can control how you respond to that. Or if someone makes not laughing at a, joke that's inappropriate or whatever the case might be. And, is it easy? Not always. I mean, you can get worn down and you can have your bad moments and all that. But, I tried the best I could, just, guys knew that my faith was real and it wasn't, a show or this. And I think that's why they respected me. And a lot of times they would refrain from maybe even being talking as bad as they might if I wasn't there. And just for respect of knowing that about my faith and knowing that it's important and it was real to me. And they knew that I cared about them as people too. And that obviously helps.
Welcome, everybody. Thank you so much for being here. We are going to have a special opportunity here today. We're going to get a chance to witness the Mark Price for 3 podcast right here. So I want to get through this quickly and get to them because I know you're here to see them. But I just want to let you guys know this is super exciting for me. I've been there for the whole podcast for these guys, like from the very beginning. It's been life-changing to see them walk through the topics of sports and coaching and faith and just basketball in general, because I think all those things blend together so well. So excited for you guys to hear them do their thing, but also talk a little bit about camp, about the Cavs, and a bunch of you guys gave us some questions, and we're going to get a chance to hear their questions answered as well today. So without further ado, I'm going to call up Aaron Conrad and Mark Price. Come on up, guys.
Thank you, Mark. Thanks to the team here at Grace for doing this. This is a first for us. So I'm going to do my intro as I normally do on the podcast, and then we're going to jump right into our topics. So thank you again for doing this. This is special. So, all right, welcome to episode 88 of the Mark Price for 3 podcast here at basketball camp here at Grace Church. Mark, how's camp? How you doing?
Camp's been awesome. I'm glad I get to sit down a little while, do the podcast now. It's been a lot of time on the court teaching the game, which I love to do, and just such a great turnout, over 120 kids at the camp, and it's just been a blast getting to share with them not only the skills and tools that I used to become a better basketball player growing up when I was their age. We're literally doing the same drills that I, did myself to grow up and develop into a good basketball player. So share that, but also sharing them tools of life and about faith, and to have that partnership with Grace Church to be able to do that and have the freedom has been awesome.
We typically talk Cavs in point 1. We do some coaching in point 2, and then point 3, you talk about your faith. So we're going to stick with that today. But what I've tried to do is group some of the similar questions together. So we're going to jump to point 2 right away because there's a lot of questions here. We're going to do some rapid fire ones at the end, but let's start off with the very first one. When you're shooting, what do you focus on?
Well, we actually talked to the kids. I could probably let some of the campers tell you what we talked about, but if you're obviously in front of the basket, I focus on the rim, the front of the rim. I'm a front rim shooter. Some people, I said, look at the back rim, but I have reasons why I like to try to shoot it and drop the ball in over the front of the rim. It's worked okay for me over the years, but so I'm going to stick with that. Of course, if you're on the wings, I talked to the kids a lot this week about using the backboard, a kind of a lost art in the game of basketball now. What a lot of people don't realize is there's a lot more forgiveness, making shots using the backboard from the wing positions. And I used an example with the campers this week of a guy who had the nickname, the big fundamental, Tim Duncan, who was obviously one of the greatest players ever, and he shot off the backboard all the time. And so, it's a skill. If you can do it, it'll really help your game. And those are the 2 things I focused on when I was shooting.
Well, former Cavalier Kyrie Irving was pretty good at using the glass as well for different angles and things when he shoots. Again, not moving fast, but we're going to move fast. Did you dream about playing in the NBA?
I did. I was, my dad was a coach when I was growing up, and actually, when I was 10 years old, he was assistant coach for the Phoenix Suns. And so as a 10-year-old, I got to go to, all these NBA games and just watch. And my mom used to tell me, even at that age, a lot of the other 10-year-olds were running around, getting popcorn or, whatever from the concession stand. But she said I would just sit glued to my seat, just watching everything that was happening on the court. And then I'd go home, and we had a basket on the outside of our garage, and I'd try to imitate what I had seen. And so at an early age, and she said this, I don't remember, but she said, somebody asked me one time, what do you want to do when you grow up? And I told them I wanted to be an NBA player. So yeah, I definitely dreamed about it for sure.
So, all right, we had an unbelievable number of questions regarding a certain guy from Chicago that you played a couple of games against. A lot of questions about that one. So let's get the big one right out of the way. This is the one that everybody wants to know. One word, Jordan or LeBron?
LeBron.
Really?
No. Sorry, I had to throw that in because I'm in Cleveland right now. So no, they're both great players. Don't get me wrong, but I only played against one of them, so I got to go with Jordan.
I was going to say, anytime we've ever
The look on your face, man. The look on your face was crazy. Yeah.
So Jordan is the GOAT in this discussion. But what was it like to play against Michael?
People ask me that a lot, and it was exciting in a lot of ways because he obviously was just an amazing player, and we seemed to always run into each other in the playoffs, and just our teams were so equal in a lot of ways, evenly matched, and yet in the playoffs he just was able to take it to another level and just hit big shot after big shot, and that part was frustrating. So there was a lot of emotions that go there. I always enjoyed that competition. We always loved competing against them, but it was frustrating that we could never get quite past them.
As a parent of athletes, what would you tell parents?
Yeah, I would just encourage parents not to, have the expectations, give those to the Lord and encourage your kid if they have a love for something. Obviously encourage them for it, but make sure they understand what's most important. And it's hard, I think, today, whether you play in travel, baseball, basketball, whatever sport, different things, and it's easy to get caught up into. But I just know this. It's like teach your kids to put the time in, the effort in, do the best you can, then leave it to the Lord and make sure that God's a big part of what they want to try to do, and honor Him in what they do and how they do it. And it'll take care of itself.
Episode 100 is a pretty big deal for us. It has been an amazing journey to just sit with Mark, hear his heart, hear his stories of the NBA. We've heard from his lovely bride. We've heard from teammates like Craig Elo. We've heard from Christian artists. We've also heard from players and coaches across the country over the last 100 episodes. But today's episode is pretty special. This is the one that I think many of you have requested and been waiting on. Today's episode is with the great Brad Daugherty. Two guys that came into the league at the same time, pretty much saved an NBA franchise. I think you're going to enjoy this one today. Thank you for listening, liking, sharing this podcast.
Of course, everybody, we have a lot of Cavs fans that listen to the podcast, and obviously, this was one of my guys. We came into Cleveland together. We'll get into that later. But one of my favorite people in the whole world, the big Brad Daugherty. Brad, thank you for coming on with us today.
Hey, man. Thank you guys, Mark, Aaron. Thank you so much for having me. 100 shows, 100 podcasts. That's phenomenal. I'm honored to be the 100th guest on your show.
Well, when Aaron was approaching me about what are we going to do about the 100th episode, there was only one guy I wanted on that, and that was you. I know a lot of people have been wondering when I was going to try to have you on. I wanted it to be the right time, and this is a special time because you're one of my guys. So anyway, Brad, we're just going to start. Obviously, some people know, most people know, but not everybody, that before we were teammates, we played against each other for 4 years in college.
Yeah,
I was at Georgia Tech. You were at North Carolina. And obviously being from Black Mountain, North Carolina, country boy, I think we had that in common, two country boys playing in the ACC. But I'm sure you had many choices when you were coming out of high school. How'd you end up at UNC?
Yeah, so, like I say, growing up in a little small town in western North Carolina, you in the state of North Carolina, college basketball and stock car racing is actually our state emblem. If you grow up in North Carolina, you have to watch that. You have to be a part of that. So I was always watching ACC basketball as a kid. My dad loved basketball and baseball as well, but we were always watching North Carolina State and North Carolina go at it. A little bit of Duke sprinkled in there. And, as I got older and got to high school, I'm a farm kid, grew up on a potato and tobacco farm, and I knew my parents weren't going to be able to afford to send me to college. So in reality, I just wanted to be good enough in sports, and I played baseball. I was a pretty good baseball player. I wanted to be good enough in sports that I could go to college for free. I had no ambitions of playing pro basketball or any of that. I just wanted to go to college for free and take the burden off of my parents. So when I got to my senior year in high school, I turned into a really good basketball player. I'd grown into this big old body, and my coach, who Bill Burrows, did a great job of really sending film and things out about me to the different coaches around the country. And before you know it, as a senior, I had like 700 offers to play college basketball. And I had a few to play baseball, believe it or not. I pitched in baseball. I had a few to do that. So that's how it started. And then, I went on some official visits, and I knew all along, at the time, Dean Smith had just established himself as the premier, not only basketball coach, but just as, just one of the premier people in the sport of basketball. And I never forget, I went on my recruiting visits. I went to Maryland, I went to Clemson, dabbled at Georgetown just a little bit, but that was too far away. And I never will forget, on all the recruiting visits I went on, I was promised all kinds of stuff, from cars to houses to all this stuff. And the one coach that didn't promise me anything was Coach Smith. And the only thing he said, he didn't even promise me that I would start on his basketball team. But he looked at my mom and said, the only thing I will promise you is Brad will get a great education. And my mom was like, that's it. You're going here. I was like, look, but we could go to this school and you get a new house and I'd get a car. I'd have some walking around money. And she was like, no, that's not going to happen. So I ended up going to North Carolina for those reasons.
We played against each other for 4 years.
Yeah.
And so you're playing against Georgia Tech.
Yeah. What's
a scouting report?
Yeah.
And how did I fit into it?
This is unbelievable as I look back on that. So, at North Carolina at that time, they were coming through, you get through the late 70s, the heck, all through the 70s, into the 80s, and they were just a freight train. And so I get to North Carolina, and the one thing I learned very quickly is it was about North Carolina. You didn't learn, I didn't know anything about any other school because it didn't matter. If you did what you were supposed to do, that's all that mattered. And this is funny, Mark. I promise you this. I told a guy, I met some guy in the airport. He played at Rutgers. He says, do you remember playing against us in New York and you guys beat us? And I said, to be honest with you, no offense, I don't remember playing against any team other than Price and Georgia Tech. And he says, really? He says, what about Len Bias? I said, Len Bias was great athlete. I said, I only had, when I was at North Carolina, the 4 years I was there, I only heard Coach Smith ever mention one player that we had to pay attention to, and that was, as a rookie to his senior year, was Mark Price. I never will forget, in that scouting report, Coach Smith said, against a guy today, he said, he's not fast, but he's extremely quick, and he's the best shooter I've ever seen. That's what Coach Smith said. He said, wow, you're going to have to pay attention because when he crosses half court, it's on. And he runs off of screens better than it, which I found out later, better than any guard I've ever seen. We have to double team Mark Price every time he gets the basketball, to the detriment. He said the rest of that team cannot beat us. And that was the scouting report every time we played you guys. And I never thought about it until, we got to Cleveland, and I started looking back on it and thinking about it, Mark. You were all ACC all 4 years in college. I think there's only maybe 6 or 7 guys who's ever done that. You were freshman of the year. You led the conference in scoring. I'd never seen anybody shoot the basketball like that. I remember playing against you your freshman year in Carmichael, and you were literally 2 steps inside that hash mark on shots, and it was nothing but nylon. I just had never seen that. I'd never seen that. And I think the thing that people didn't realize until it was too late is the offensive prowess that you had, and you were such a tremendous, your basketball IQ is tremendously high. You made people better because of your ability. Mm-hmm. People had to respect you in such a regard. I look at those Georgia Tech teams that you played on, and you had some really good players. You take you off of that team, man, some of those teams win 15 games. And that's no kid. That's the truth. Right. That's the truth. Wow. So you and Len Bias are the only 2 players I played against in college basketball that left an indelible print in my mind. Len, because he was just so athletically gifted.
Right.
You know,
right.
just so explosive. And because you just didn't expect it. I didn't expect that from you. Your quickness, lateral quickness, was off the charts. I mean, Kenny Smith was baseline to baseline. The guy was probably as fast a player as I've ever seen.
Oh,
And I
yeah,
remember in the
for
ACC
sure.
tournament. Yeah, ACC tournament. You stole the ball from him on an inbounds play and took off. He couldn't catch it. And so, yeah, you two guys stick out to me more than anyone I've ever played against in college basketball, without question.
Mark and I often talk about the fact that draft was changed the course. You're now a broadcaster, and we'll talk about that in a minute. But gosh, that draft changed the course of history for this franchise. Mark, and Mark was a trade from Dallas. Hot Rod was in the wings. Harper. Johnny Newman, right? Like that changed the course of this franchise. Did you have any idea when all this happened that you would literally be changing the course of an entire franchise?
No, Aaron, I did. What was ironic, we get to Cleveland, and like you say, man, we didn't have a GM or a coach. They had fired everybody. You get there, and then all of a sudden I meet Wayne Embry comes on board, and then they bring Lenny Wilkins on board. But, I just knew in my heart that whatever was going to happen, we were going to change. Something had to change. It was really bad. I mean,
so bad.
They kind of had a lot of different pieces and parts that didn't fit.
Mm-hmm.
We get there in the summer, their off-season stuff was a joke. There was nothing going on, and everybody just didn't take them seriously. And, I knew what Mark was about. I played against Hot Rod. We played Tulane a couple times, and he had guarded me. And I thought he was really an incredible defender.
Mm-hmm.
So I knew what he was a little bit about. And then with Ron Harper, had watched him during the NCAA tournament, saw what he brought to the table. So I knew we had some good pieces, but the challenge was going to be to change the mindset. The mindset
culture
in Cleveland, oh my goodness, was awful. It was everything was just, doom and gloom. Everybody expected you to lose. The media just gave you no respect, and it was nationwide. And so, we started out that first year, our rookie season, and we were playing games, and I was just watching how we played, and the guys that we had on our team, they just didn't play hard. They didn't play hard. And I just didn't understand what we were doing. It was like guys would go through the motions. Coach Wilkins was trying to establish, like you say, a culture and some discipline, and nobody adhered to it. You're always having to get rid of, suspend guys. This is crazy.
Yeah.
And then once we got through that first year and got to our second season, kind of figured out that, okay, I'm going to be more in charge of what I'm doing. And Ron Harper and Mark was starting to come into his own, and Hot Rod, and these guys were all guys that worked. So what we started doing every day in practice was just demolishing the veterans, just destroying them.
Mm-hmm.
And we just made it evident and very clear that it was our basketball team. And all of you older guys, you got to get out of the way.
When Mark Price was drafted, traded, it's so different now. Like we have ESPN. It's a big thing. How did you even find out?
No, I knew he got drafted. I knew he got drafted by Dallas.
You're right.
But I didn't think anything else about it. I didn't know he got traded to us until I saw him.
What was your response? You just mentioned earlier how you played against this guy. He's the guy, the one guy you schemed against.
Yeah.
Were you like, what was your thought? Like, man, I get to team with this guy now.
Yeah. So my first thought, I didn't know Mark got traded, like I said, until I saw him, because you just didn't have it, wasn't in. And my first thought was, okay, can he get that shot off in this league? Because it's so physical. We played when people knocked the crap out of you. And that's immediate what I thought.
Right.
I said, if we can get him some room and some space, they have no idea. They have no idea. And that was my first thoughts. And then my thoughts of Mark was always, if we could somehow make him a 2-guard, he'd score 30 a game. You know, I'm not kidding you. I used to always think that. I used to think, man, we could just somehow, but the 2 guards in our league were so big, and like I said, the game was so you could hold out on the perimeter.
Right.
And Michael, those guys would hold you, and it wasn't a foul.
Right.
So the wheels started turning, and then the thing that I just didn't realize about Mark was his ability as a playmaker. You know, he could shoot the crap out of it. But once we started practicing and Mark started practicing, I've realized really quickly that Mark and I thought about the game the same way.
Mm-hmm.
You know, we both were fundamentally sound. I mean, we weren't the greatest athletes in the world, so we had to be fundamentally sound. You know, we were good athletes and really good players, but we both thought about the game and tried to be one step ahead of the game. That's what helped us be successful against people who were better athletes than us. And that's why we played so well together, because we were thinking about what we were doing. And once we started to click, I just said to myself, man, the issue, I never forget my 3rd season. I'm sitting there and I'm looking and I'm like, we can beat anyone because we've got every piece and we're young.
But man, thank you so much for who you are. And you know how much I love you, man. I was a brother and as a teammate. We went through the wars together there in Cleveland, and man, it was so much fun. And now to kind of revisit and get to hang out and, you know, see each other in Cleveland time to time as you're doing games, and I'm up there, whatever they got me doing from time to time. So, but anyway, man, have a great day. We love you and appreciate you.
Hey, thank you so much, Mark. I love you. Yeah, I cherish the time we get to hang out and laugh and be the grumpy old man sitting on the porch watching these young guys. It's so much fun. This has been an honor and a privilege to do this, be a part of this. And Aaron, nice to meet you. I love your Carolina lock-in. You're a legend just because of that. I appreciate that.
Don't encourage him, Brad. Don't encourage him.
Hey, wait. But I got to get this in. I think Mark had technical issues so that just Brad and I could just,
it was great. We were rapping, man. That's right.
Well, and we could breathe in all the Carolina blue and just you know, and I don't want to say that happened for a reason, but no, I want to tell a quick story and we'll get off. I promise I'll let you guys off. But I got to attend one game with the great Mark Price, and I'm sitting there and I'm looking up at 3 banners: Larry Nance, Mark Price, and Brad Daugherty. And it was crazy, like the craziest thing for me as a kid growing up watching you guys. And then I got to witness Mark walk over to you because you were doing the game. And I have a picture of this in my phone of you two just embracing. And man, I sat there and said, man, I love that so much as a Cleveland guy. Again, we know, just understand the city of Cleveland understands and loves you all forever cherished, because of what you did for the city of Cleveland, whether or not there was ever a trophy. The trophy was that we all understand how much the 2 guys that I get the opportunity to sit at their feet today and be a part of this podcast. And I have a feeling anyone listening to knows what you all did for Cleveland basketball and the NBA. And so thank you. Jonathan Isaac is probably best known for his play with the Orlando Magic as a power forward. He was the number 6 pick overall by the Orlando Magic. He's also known as being key reserve for the very, very good Orlando Magic team. Jonathan Isaac is also very well known for his courage and his faith and his ability to stand for what he believes in. Today, we had the honor of sitting down with Jonathan Isaac.
And then COVID hits and the bubble.
Right.
Bubble hits. And before we even get into all the other stuff, describe to the people what that was really like. I don't think anybody could ever really understand exactly being in a bubble and not being able to leave, and people not tell us just from your own experience what that was like.
Yeah, it was just so weird because it was like Operation Warp Speed. Like it's moving so fast. You know, obviously the NBA is trying to figure out how to, you know, let the season continue. And it's like, okay, this is what we're doing. We're going into the bubble, and, you know, nobody in, nobody out. If you leave, there are all these, you know, repercussions and everything like that. And the players just kind of had to say, okay, you know, this is what we're in. And the longer that you were there, the better that you were playing, the longer you had to be there, and less time with your family and all different things like that. So FaceTiming a bunch and all that, but it was just difficult, a hard thing to adjust to, and then focus, have enough, kind of brain power to focus on the games while the world is kind of going crazy around us. Was difficult, and we were kind of the entertainment while people were going through this, this real struggle.
Yeah, I mean, just from a mental side of things, did you see guys kind of, almost feel claustrophobic or like?
Yeah, for sure.
Kind of feel.
I even had moments of I need to do something to just recalibrate. Like if it's just walk around, if it's they tried to have like a spot for us to be able to play pool and ping pong and stuff like that, but it just wasn't it. But there were definitely times where I had to be like, I need to get out of this room and go do something and just kind of get some air. Ended up getting drafted, like you said, number 6. And that's where my journey with God really started. One day I'm getting on an elevator in my new apartment building, and this random guy stops me and says, I can tell you how to be great. And I said, how? And he said, you have to know Jesus. And I said, man, I know Jesus because, I grew up Christian and all different things, but I wasn't living that way. And that was really the genesis of my life kind of getting flipped upside down. And I started to run into this guy all the time. And just for the lack of time, but fast forward, this man becomes my pastor and starts to teach me about the love of God. And that was the antidote to how I was feeling. I was so used to working for love and trying to figure out how to be what I needed, what I thought everybody needed me to be. But when I started to understand that God loved me for me and gave himself up for me, it started to calm a lot of the kind of tension that was inside of my body. And it's still a struggle to this day, but through his teaching, I've learned how to combat it and fight it. And so as I'm growing as a Christian in the league and I'm cleaning up my life and I'm telling God, you know what, I want to be who you want me to be and do things your way and, turning away from things that I was used to doing, then I get smack dab in this bubble situation. I remember, seeing everything and not knowing how to feel. There was an anger inside of me, obviously, about the situation, but then at the same time, a desire to seek God and figure out how to feel. And so I remember, my pastor was preaching one Sunday before we went into the bubble, and he was talking about the riots were going on at the time. And he came from this passage of Peter, jumping forward and cutting off the guy's ear that was going to arrest Jesus. And how Jesus said, if you live by the sword, you'll die by the sword. And what he kind of summed that up to mean is like, look, if we as Christians especially don't come into this moment properly with the right, mindset and love and forgiveness and grace, then we're going to get the same result that we've always gotten. But there's an opportunity here to show love and to be the one to stand up and speak truth, regardless of what the two sides are saying or what anybody feels. He said, no, Jesus said, if he be lifted up, he would draw men to himself. And so I kind of hid that in my heart going into the bubble. I didn't know the whole thing about kneeling yet. I was just in there saying, hey, this Black Lives Matter thing, if I'm ever have the opportunity to speak to it, I know what I believe. And there were a lot of times for me that I would try to have conversations with people who were really invested into the movement. And I would say, hey, this is how I feel. And it was like we're not, this isn't the time for that. Like, this isn't the time for love, grace. And this is not that time. This is the time for, what we're focused on. And so we get into the bubble and a team kneels. So I think it was the Denver Nuggets or something like that. It was the first game, and they knelt, and we had a game the next day. So everybody's kind of looking around at each other like, obviously we're going to do the same thing. And we have a team meeting. The heads of our team come in and say, hey, this is you guys' decision. You do what you want to do. And it turns into a players only meeting. And everybody's like, look, we don't have a choice. This is a no brainer. They knelt. If we don't kneel, it's going to look like we're not, for the movement or whatnot. So let's just get it over with. And for some reason, one of my teammates turned towards me and says, yo, Jonathan, what are you going to do? This is my third year in the league. This is my third year. Like, why are you turning towards me and asking me what I'm going to do? But I understandably, because, they had seen, I guess just who I was, when I started as a rookie, I was living the same life as everybody else. I wanted everything that the NBA world had to offer, and kind of at a flip of a switch, I'm changing. And, my nickname on the team is Baby Jesus and all these different things. And so he says to me, what are you going to do? And I kind of took my pause and took a breath and said, fellas, I'm not going to kneel, and I'm not going to wear the t-shirt. And they're like, my gosh, here we go. Like, why does it have to be you? We got to talk about it a little bit. And I was just like, look, like, I can't throw stones from a glass house. Like, I know we see this as wickedness and evil, but I'm that way too. I think that if we could show love and grace in this moment, that we could have real change from both sides. Some of them understood it, some of them didn't, but they were just kind of fed up with, and we can get through this without any controversy if we just do it. And so that's how it kind of dissolved. And I remember that night, as we were getting ready for the next day, I called my pastor, and the same guy that stopped me in the elevator, same guy that's been, pouring into me and mentoring me these 3 years as I'm growing up in the league. And I said to him, like, I don't think you understand how crazy this is going to be. Like, I'm going to be a sellout. I'm going to be, a whole lot of things. And I hadn't signed my NBA contract extension. I was coming up to that summer after the season. And he said to me, Jonathan, you cannot stand for God and God not stand for you. And I was like, oh, man, I was like, you're right. You're right.
Wow.
And definitely brought me peace. But at the same time, I didn't even sleep that night. I was up all night. And we get to the next day, and, we're heading into the all there is a Black Lives Matter warm-up t-shirt. We don't have anything else. So I decided just not to wear it. And so I'm everybody else is out there on the court in their Black Lives Matter t-shirt, and I'm just in my jersey. And we get to the moment, and everybody's staring at me. My teammates are looking at me. The other team's looking at me. The refs are looking at me. And I'm just standing there praying under my breath, like, God, get me through this, please. Like, let this be about you and not about me. Just like that, it was over, but it was just starting, right? Because I had to answer questions from the media, and my phone is blowing up, and I'm feeling the backlash. But then at the same time, I'm recognizing there are people who understand what I'm saying and are recognizing that this is an opportunity. Obviously, it's a tragedy and what happened, but this is an opportunity for real change. And if we could lift up the name of Jesus, and really for me, it was recognizing the issue. Like, I recognized the problem. I just believe there to be a different solution. And I recognize that racism and all the different things that plague our society are heart issues. And, kneeling and wearing a t-shirt isn't going to address the heart. It's going to create more division and whatnot. And again, I told those guys, I respect your decision to kneel, respect my decision in return. And I thought that actually offering a real solution, which was Jesus crucified for our sins, for every man, a woman, and on both sides, no matter what skin color you are, was going to be the answer.
I can just tell you how powerful, it was watching. I didn't know you at the time. I followed NBA basketball, of course, but your interview, when you were clear, you were thoughtful, you were respectful, and your explanation, it's like, I think it opened a lot of people's eyes. And I know God used that in a mighty way. When we were about to interview you and we talked about and knew you were going to come on, one of my favorite stories in the Bible is the story about Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego, getting thrown into the fiery furnace.
Mm-hmm.
They looked down in there, and there was a fourth man in the fire. And to me, that's like you had to be like Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego and say, guys, no matter what you say, I'm not going to bow, and I'm going to honor God in the best way I know how. And God had to been in that fire with you. I can't imagine how you could have walked through that without that.
Right. No, absolutely 100%. And again, also a testament to the people that I have around me. Like while I was in the bubble after it all happened, my church family back at this little church in the plaza that I started going to because this man I met on the elevator, they sent me a video of every single one of them saying, Jonathan, I'm standing with you. With you, I'm standing with you, down to the little kids in the church. But that encouraged me to keep going. My wife, who was my fiance at the time, encouraging me, having my pastor on the phone. And what also happened was after that happened. So now this is the next day after I stood. We're going to practice, and we're leaving practice now to go back to the hotel. And I get a text to my phone, hey, players only meeting when we get back to the hotel. Mm-hmm. And I'm thinking, okay, cool. As I'm getting off the bus, one of my teammates is like, yo, just heads up, man, this is about you. And I'm like, shoot, okay. So we get into the meeting, and it was rough. It was chaos. Like, yo, you're trying to hijack the movement. We had guys that were pretty really invested in it, and that's also something that I understood. It was like, we had guys that were going to the rallies and really a part of everything, and they felt really convicted about the whole situation, and so they were angry at me about kind of now the focus is on me and not on them and what they were doing with the movement. And they're having to answer questions about me. That's what somebody, I got to answer questions about you and all these different things. And it was rough. I remember I left that meeting. I went to my room. I called Pastor and I was crying on the phone. I'm like, I don't know if I did that. I messed up. I didn't say this. I said that or whatever. And he's like, no. He's like, if you respected their decision to kneel, they got to respect your decision to stand. You have no reason to feel bad. And he was able to kind of calm me down in that moment and, let me know everything's going to be okay. And so it's a huge testament to the people that I had around me too, to keep me focused and keep me motivated and keep me sane through that whole, obviously, God being there as well.
That's an amazing, amazing story. And to have that, your pastor and those people with you, I've been in situations in my own life where, I've needed to lean upon others in those kind of situations. And I don't think anybody could understand. It's one thing for the outside, because I've been a part of that huddle, part of that teammate, situation. And, it's one thing for people outside to criticize. You can kind of be like, I don't know you. I don't know you. I don't know you. But to have your guys, your teammate, you guys you go to war with, pull you in a room and kind of pile on. I mean, that had to have been tough. I can't even imagine.
Absolutely.
Thank you for listening to another episode of the Mark Price for 3 podcast. Remember to subscribe, like, review, and share. I'm Josh Price, and we will talk to you again on the next episode.
You don't have to go very far looking for bad news because somehow it just finds you. So finding peace in the chaos can be really difficult, but it doesn't have to be because the River mobile app exists. The River is a Christian music radio station dedicated to playing music to help you get through life's toughest moments or life's happiest moments and everywhere in between. And all from artists who love Jesus and are real people just like you. Listening is easy. You can download it wherever you get apps from. Just search 1049 The River or listen online at riverradio.com.